Hello, my name is Bobby O'Perry. This is the 12th episode of BPerryFilms podcast. On today's episode, we'll be talking about real estate. We know a lot of people are deciding and moving around, trying to figure out if they're going to rent or buy their first home. Today's guest, we have Ben Leavitt. He is a licensed real estate advisor for the company Next Gen Reality. He will be giving some tips to those of you who are looking to buy their first home. So, Ben, you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Bobby. And I appreciate you having me on here on your podcast. I met Bobby a few weeks ago. We kind of clicked and, he asked me to come join. So again, my name's Ben Leavitt. I work with Next Gen Realty in Boston. I've been working in real estate now 6 years, and I started out doing leasing. I got really good at leasing, started taking my clients that I rented apartments to and showing them the way into home ownership. So started buying condos, single families. And then because of leasing, I also work with a lot of investors in Greater Boston, so that's basically on the multifamily investment side, 3 families, 4 families. In Greater Boston, you have a lot of that kind of inventory. If you ever drive the Boston streets, a 3 family is a pretty typical property. So my business at this point is primarily residential and investment sales. I still do some leasing because it, kind of feeds my, pool of clients. And I really, really enjoy taking people that were renters and then, putting them into their first home. That's probably one of the most rewarding parts of my job on a day-to-day basis. I have a background. I started out after college. I worked a little bit in corporate. I have a lot of energy. It was not a good fit for me. It was kind of a cube culture. I just never really felt like it belonged. And then, the economy tanked in 2000, 2008, and I ended up getting laid off. And at the time, I thought it was a big hit, but I look at everything like an opportunity, and I brushed myself off and started to find my way where I experienced, different things, went out and eventually got into sales for apparel. So I worked apparel sales in California. And that kind of helped me build my ability to build relationships, nurture relationships. And then, fast forward a few years, I decided to come back to the East Coast to work on a development project. Basically dropped everything, came out to Massachusetts, found this reservoir with an island on it, and we decided we wanted to build an aerial treetop adventure park. And moved this project along. We had a project design, we were getting permits, had raised money, and we got fought by neighbors that did not want the project, not in their backyard, but abutting their land on the reservoir. And I learned a lot of stuff from that project, but I ended up flat on my face in Boston, expensive rent. And, this is after the investor basically had backed out because of being tied up in court. And I had to make a move. So I actually went back to bartending just to kind of lick my wounds. And it was through bartending where I met a bunch of real estate agents at a party one night. And literally that night was the day I decided that is what I'm going to do. And I'm the kind of person when I figure out, what my path is going to be, I go all in. I mean, I'm going to bring 100% focus, 100% energy, determination to whatever I'm focusing on. And that is what I did. I took the 40-hour real estate course and then basically got into the exam pretty soon after. And I passed it my first time and then started shopping around for brokerages. So interviewed at 3 larger brokerages, and they were all asking me the same question. Who do you know, basically? Who's your family? And I get it. You want me to work my sphere of influence. I went to Next Gen Realty, which is part of Boston Pads, 6 brokerages throughout Greater Boston. And they never asked me that question. They basically said, we're going to teach you how to build that organically, leveraging the data in our database. And that is what I did. And, my first year, I jumped right in. I didn't do great. I always tell people I wasn't eating lobster, but I certainly wasn't eating ramen noodles. I basically right down the line got my bills paid. But the thing that was important to me is that I saw that I could do it. And I believed in myself. And, real estate's one of those things you're going to get what you put into it. So if you have a strong work ethic, I think that's like the biggest thing, just being present and showing up, and amazing things can happen. So now I'm going into my 6th year. At this point, I primarily focus on sales, and I just keep growing. And that's really my plan going forward. I'm very into, building wealth through real estate. I'm really passionate about showing my friends and clients how to do the same thing. I now own a 2-family property in Boston, which, for those that are in this city, real estate is expensive. So I have just taken my path 1 year at a time, kind of just building, and I continue to grow further. So that's a
Definitely.
little background on me.
So let's define what is real estate, because that is a broad topic than what people actually perceive it to be.
Yeah. So, I mean, real estate in its basic form is ownership of real property. Whether that be land, a house, a multifamily property, a commercial development, you have ownership in it. The other side of the spectrum is renting, where you don't have ownership. So I think that is the main thing that I would highlight there. There's a lot of different stuff that comes with ownership, but real estate is basically having ownership in real property. So
Definitely. So when I was doing some research on real estate, it broke it down into 5 different categories: residential, commercial, industrial, land, and special purposes. And I think
yeah.
we can go forth on describing each one so people can
Well,
get
so
some.
I'm going to be very upfront with you. Like, I don't do industrial deals. I'm very focused on residential and investment. Or I've done some commercial. Not my realm. It's the different facets of real estate kind of operate on different speeds, shall we say. Residential investment sales move kind of quick. I mean, it can take. You can close on a property in a few weeks. On the other side of the spectrum, you have the commercial real estate, industrial. Those are very, very complicated deals. I always find that the brokers are just on a different wavelength per se. So I'm not too familiar with those, but I could definitely speak on residential.
Okay, so residential, you can go into that one first.
Yeah, so residential sales would be like a condo, a single family. That's my bread and butter for residential sales. So, and a lot of those, as I said, for me are past renters or referrals from past renters. I built up my whole book of business off rentals, which I think is really important, to understand in the scheme of things. So that is what residential sales means to me.
Definitely. For industrial, people think
So
of manufacturing, production, anything that is, you know, massive.
that could be like a plant,
Yeah.
like, yeah, I mean, that's just not my wheelhouse, so I couldn't really speak on it. But you're
Mm.
thinking like industrial properties would be like an Amazon warehouse. That would be your typical property that would fall into that category.
And then land. People can buy land, whether
Yeah,
you're in the state or in other states.
yeah,
Land is like the acres of land that you purchase, and it doesn't
yeah,
depreciate value. But you can build
yeah.
homes
And again,
and
just being that I live in a very dense city, I've never done a land deal. Land is very hard to come by. Okay. A lot of the development projects I've done have had existing structures on the land already, and they're torn down and something else is built. But I've never done a deal with just land. And there are people that focus on that in different parts outside the city, but it's not something I see too much inside the city. And for me, I'm a city kid through and through. And I can't work the whole state. There's just no way. So I have specific markets I kind of focus on, and they're all within basically the greater Boston area. So, and it's not to say that I'll never get into land deals. It's just with the residential side and my investment sales side, it keeps me so busy, and I've got systems in place that kind of keep moving me forward. So,
and then you said you also do commercial. Please can you explain that?
so I've done some commercial leasing. I've not done commercial sales. I've done only 3 commercial deals. They were all pretty decent in size. I was dealing with corporations leasing places in greater Boston. And it took, one of them took, I want to say 14 months to complete. And really nothing to do with me. It's more that there's a lot of attorneys going between the 2 parties. and things are constantly being changed and negotiated. And for someone that gets up at 4 a.m. and just hits it and kind of goes throughout his day, it just didn't fit me. So for that reason, and that's just something that I decided to kind of step back from. I'm still very close with some of my commercial clients, two in particular that I placed in, one in Newberry Street and one in Somerville. And they actually refer me clients, but I've kind of stepped away. I learned just from getting my little taste of it that that's not where I want to do my business. So there's brokers that just solely focus on that. You have to understand, like, yeah, there's many different aspects of real estate, kind of how we went over. I think a lot of brokers kind of pick some lanes to kind of stick in that work for them. And industrial, the commercial side, just right now hasn't been a good fit for me. I have done commercial deals where they're larger multifamily properties, but the bread and butter is your typical 3-fam, 2-family. Those are my favorite ones to work with because, one, the financing is a lot easier if they need it. Once you get into commercial financing, it's a whole new ball game. And so, those are kind of the areas I stick. So I couldn't really offer you much insight on industrial deals or large commercial deals because it's just not where my business is focused.
Yeah, but that's pretty neat that you got to experience that, whether or not that it worked for you or not, but you got to test it a little bit.
It was great too because I added a lot of value to this company. It was a high-end furniture maker. I mean, they make not just furniture, but they build out kitchens, and it just very, very well-designed products that cater to a certain client. And they were in a large space in downtown Boston. I mean, it was a massive storefront on the first floor. And for their business, they didn't need that much space. So we basically took them from their larger space and then put them into a much more functional space on Newberry Street on a 4th floor walk-up where they have the entire floor, and they've built a beautiful office. They have a showroom, and they kind of invite clients by invite up there. But it was a really cool experience. And as I said, I still talk to a lot of them to this day. But the deal took a long time, and time is money. Like, that's the one resource none of us can really spare. Like, once it's spent, it's gone. And because it dragged on so long, I can do a lot. I can help a lot more people in that time frame without dealing with a transaction like that, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
So,
perfect sense.
yeah.
You want your time to be valued along with the money, because you have to kind of divide it up and you have bills to pay.
And I think that's the cool thing about real estate is that there's nothing that is stopping me from trying to go after industrial deals. I just know what my strengths are, and I know what I like at this point. And I like dealing with people. And when you're dealing with a lot of those larger deals, yes, you're dealing with people, but you're also dealing with big companies, and there's just a lot more red tape. I'm much more savvy with dealing one-on-one, whether it's a landlord in the city or a first-time home buyer. I like that personal relationship. And I'm genuinely someone that, when I work with a client, I will do anything to make the deal work out how they want that deal to work out. And I just don't disappear after the deal. A lot of my clients have actually turned into friends. I mean, there's many that I'll go out to dinner with, or, drop pies off to on the holidays. Like, I stay in touch with them, and I want to know what's going on in their lives. And it's not just a one-off kind of thing. Whether you buy now and 6 years later, you're going to have to sell, like, I'm going to be there for you. And that's for that reason. That's why I really stick to the residential, in investment.
That's
side.
more personal too, because you get that
much more personal. I got into this because I like relationships. It's the same reason why, like, when everything kind of fell apart, I went to bartending again, which it was always one of those things I could fall back on. But bartending is kind of the same thing. You're talking it up with people. You're serving people. It just happens. I know a lot of agents that were bartenders that are really, really good agents now. And I think that comes from dealing with people. And so, again, that's kind of why the path I'm on, is kind of focused on these two arenas. So
that's similar to me, because everyone's like, don't you want to work with big corporations? I mean, I say maybe in the future, but there's that type of connection that you lose when you become a corporation versus when
100%, man. And I felt that. And that's why, I have a degree in finance. Okay. I thought I always wanted to be a financial analyst, get into mergers, acquisitions, something like that. And then when I got into my entry level roles in, companies I will not name, but big, large companies, it felt like I was just this little cog in the wheel. And I didn't really feel like I was adding value, and it really wasn't giving purpose to my life. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It just didn't work for me. So, and that kind of goes into something else we talked about, W-2 income versus 1099 income. And I don't know if you want me to share on that now, but that kind of bodes well because, when I was in corporate, I was a W-2 employee, which means I'm getting a paycheck and, my taxes, Social Security are being subtracted out. On the flip side, 1099 is I'm earning income and then I have to take care of my taxes.
Yep.
The thing I like, and I think the big difference between the two is that you're capped. At a W-2, unless you're getting a raise, you're not going to make more income. It's basically the same thing every 2 weeks, monthly, however you're paid. A 1099 employee has the ability to literally just see the world in a different mindset. Like I genuinely look with like the lens of abundance because I know that the harder I work, the more effort I put in, the more, I'm going to be rewarded for it. And so it really gives you unlimited earning potential. Is it scary at first? Yes, it's scary leaving that comfort, but everything to grow, like just like how everyone says to grow, you got to be pressured. There's got to be something pushing you. And I think, I'll never do anything but what I'm doing now. And I'll be upfront with you. Like my end goal is to build wealth for my family and then be able to step back and have a team under me that's kind of going from what I, did early on in my career. That time is still a ways away, but that's where I want to get to. I get a lot of people, a lot of agents that, they talk about work-life balance, and, I get agents that, come in at, 10 o'clock and then they're probably gone home by 2. I don't know where they are, but I think for anything that's 1099 where you have the ability to make what you put in, I took it seriously and I just showed up and I worked. And my work-life balance is very different from a lot of people. My work-life balance is I want to work as hard as I can right now. And then in 15 years, I want to have my balance and I want to be able to do what I want. I want to be able to spend time with my family, travel, and enjoy life because our time, as I said, is really short here. And I realize that. And I want to make the most of it and be able to enjoy it. And for that reason, I really think the 1099 structure or being paid as a 1099 employee is, one of the best things I ever decided to do. For example, in corporate, and I am not kidding, they'll give you a 3% raise. And at least that's what they were giving out, back in the mid 2000s when I was working at corporate. And, that's great. But like, when you look at it, I'm like, God, that kind of sucks. Real estate. I mean, I've had years where I've doubled what I've made the year before. So it's been like this ladder going up. And in fact, I've never made less money, from the year prior. So like it's steadily gone up. It's also a lot of fun. And I get to meet a lot of great people. So, if anyone ever wants to reach out about what it's like to be a 1099 employee, please call me or reach out to me on Instagram because it comes with challenges, but I think it comes with just the benefits greatly outweigh any reason why I would, ever go back to a W-2.
A quote that sticks with me a lot is, do you want to work for money or do you want the money to work for you? And some people make that decision. Some people prefer being a W-2. It's like everything's already structured for you.
Yep. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you need to understand who you are and what makes you tick. You know what I mean?
And I think the 1099, it requires a sense of responsibility because if you don't pay taxes on time, the IRS does not play and you can get penalized. But you get to create your own type of schedule depending on what the client that you're working for is.
Yep. But I'm gonna say, like, at least in the real estate space, and I'm not saying, I know some agents that actually work W-2 jobs and then they leverage everyone from their W-2 jobs in their evening job as a real estate agent, and they do really well. But I really, really feel that the people that go all in are the ones that are most successful. And I know for myself, like if I was buying a home per se, which is a very large purchase, it's a big step for a lot of people. I'd want to work with someone that was a professional. And to me, professional means that's what you do, and that's what you get up, and that's what you're all about. And I have a hard time taking people that are part-time as a real estate professional, and maybe that's, not a good way to think about it, but like, I like the people that are showing up every day and trying to get better, and going all in. I talked about that earlier. That's one thing I've always thought, like if I'm going to make a decision to do something, and sometimes I might have a little hesitancy, like getting to that decision to make the jump. But once I make the jump, I go. And everyone has that little voice inside that's going to tell you, hey, you need to pick up, you need to do better here. You need to do better here. I try to listen to that voice, and it's steered me to a good place so far. So I'm just going to keep listening to it. So.
Definitely. I think the last property was special, which is for like government buildings, libraries, parks.
And I'm going to be honest with you, I have nothing to comment on that. Yeah.
But I just wanted to make sure that we covered all 5, just in case any of the viewers want to start up their own churches, parks, or any other type of housing.
Yep.
So next we'll go into renting versus buying.
Okay.
What are pros and cons that you feel that there are for renting?
So, I mean, renting, you're obviously paying someone else's mortgage. You pay money to live in a space, and at the end of the day, then that money's gone. It's not in your pocket anymore. It's in the landlord's pocket. On the flip side, when you buy a home, that mortgage that you pay, in the most basic of ways to look at it, is almost like a savings account. You're going to have a mortgage, which will basically be principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Insurance, obviously you need to cover the home, but your principal is basically a savings account for you. You're putting money into your home, and then you have appreciation working on the other side of the spectrum, and you're actually building wealth. You're not building wealth through renting. And I think a lot of people understand that. I think the biggest thing for renters is understanding, well, one, how do I buy? 2, and I remember myself, I was like, I'll never be able to home in Greater Boston. Like that little self-doubt would tell me that, because, early on in my career, I'm dealing with these large transactions, and, it was mind-boggling to me. We don't live, in parts of the Midwest. This is a very, very expensive market. But I do know that a lot of people are renting thinking that they can't buy. And then when they actually go through the process of speaking to a lender, they find out that it's actually much closer to one than what they thought. I have a good friend who recently purchased her first condo. She had been living in the same apartment for 6 years in Quincy, which I can tell you, anyone living in an apartment for 6 years as a renter must really like the apartment. And she did. It was close to the beach. It was beautiful. And I know she was really sad, to leave it. But she had always been going on these websites and, trying to figure out what she could be pre-qualified for. And it was always giving her numbers, which I would assume just made her think it wasn't in reach. And I finally was like, you need to go speak to a lender. Okay. Because a big part of this transaction is going to be getting pre-approved for a mortgage. Most of us don't have cash to go buy these big expensive homes. So you're going to need, a mortgage to get it done. Once I actually set her up with a lender, she was blown away. Was she able to qualify or get pre-approved? She was pre-approved for a lot more than she thought she would be. And so those are those things where, like, people just sit there and get caught up on the internet and don't really talk to an actual professional that can help guide them, to ownership. So I think that's one big thing.
I remember when I was having a conversation with you and during your presentation at WeWork, you had everyone asking were they interested in renting, buying, and stuff like that. And I had mentioned to you, since of my work, I perform and I'm doing the film thing. right
Yeah.
now. I like the flexibility of renting because I can go to multiple places. But when I
Yeah.
retire, I do want to get a home, maybe in my 40s or whatever, when I
Yeah.
became when I become more stationary.
Yeah.
But
Well,
these
so
are
let me just speak to this, Bobby. So I totally understand it, and I have clients that are like that. I have some rental clients that rented 4 years in a row, and we would just keep moving to different neighborhoods. It was like they just wanted to get the feel of the city. But then I also get people that take the plunge on a home, okay, in Greater Boston, and then they decide, oh, I want to go to LA 2 years later, which happens. I mean, I came from Los Angeles to the East Coast. Like people do move around. I think the good thing about this city is that it's a very, very robust rental market. I'm sure everyone that knows to try to rent it in Boston, you've basically got these cycles where people come in. September 1st being the largest. It's kind of dovetails with all the universities we have here. But I've had many clients that buy and then they decide to go somewhere else. And instead of selling the property, they end up holding it as a rental, which that way you end up generating passive income, which we kind of touched upon for a second. So there's two ends to it to kind of understand. You can kind of go both ways. So all I know and all I believe is that, there's nothing better than ownership. I've rented many apartments. I've lived in many great areas, but that's a sunk cost, even with the flexibility, because most of these leases, you're going to be tied down for at least a year, okay, at least in Greater Boston. And so there's clients that I've had clients that have bought the year before and had to, they call me to sell it and somehow have sold just for certain circumstances. But there's many that I've flipped where they're, now rentals that I don't manage them. It's not my forte, but I help them get them rented, or I have my team help them get them rented. So again, I understand the benefits of renting, and I understand renting can help you get to ownership. It's an important step. But I'm in team ownership all day, no
that's
matter where you're going. This is a very, very, unique city in the fact that it has such a strong rental market. And, we have a real problem with housing. There's just not enough of it, and it's the rental seasons are kind of like musical chairs. You have these clients going around looking for homes, seeing different properties, not sure if they want to apply here or there. And then before they know it, both properties they were interested in are gone, and then you get to the end of the season and it's kind of like you just have all these properties that like no one wanted. And now you kind of got to settle. So it's also highly competitive, but I think, getting that mindset of not, having your expenses too high. So the thing that I did when I was a renter, I wasn't trying to live in properties that, like a luxury building. I never needed to live in a luxury building. You're paying for a lot of services that you'll probably never use. Okay.
yes, yeah.
Some of them have some pretty ridiculous amenities. Let's just say that. So I tried to keep my expenses low when I was looking to try to get in the market to buy, if that makes sense. So never renting something, even though it may have been real shiny and nice, like I probably would have taken something a little bit, less updated so that I was able to save money because, you do need a down payment. And we can kind of speak to that in a moment, but to begin the process of getting pre-approved and to eventually buy a home.
Okay. So I also wrote down some bullet points for owning a home.
Yeah.
There's a fixed rate, and sometimes it can get lowered over time if you're like a good client, and sometimes your property adds grows in value
Wait, a fixed rate on what? On the mortgage?
on the mortgage.
Yeah. So like I will tell you, I sell homes. I'm not a mortgage lender. I understand the nuts and bolts, but for the most part, like once it's a fixed rate, let's say it's on a 30-year mortgage, that rate's going to stay the same unless you refinance. And refinancing, many times people are trying to refinance into a lower rate. We're kind of in a situation right now where mortgage rates are at all-time lows. I mean, they're starting to tick up, and this year they're expected to go up even more. So there's a lot of people rushing into the market because you can borrow money real cheap right now. The thing is, when you get out to the possible refinance, you're going to be in a situation where the interest rate's going to be slightly higher. So that's all stuff you got to kind of figure into your math. And again, I'm not a lender. I help people get homes and investment properties. That's my main business. Dave Johnson at Bank of England, who you met, he would be a great person to get on your podcast because he can give you the nuts and bolts and all the inner workings of how the lending side works. But most times, that rate on that product is going to, if it's a fixed term, if it's a 30-year mortgage with a fixed term rate, it's going to remain the same over the whole 30 years.
Yeah.
So,
And
and
then
there's many different products out there that, you have adjustable rate mortgages. I'll tell you, my clients right now, everyone's going with a 30-year fixed. I have cash buyers because the money is so inexpensive right now that instead of spending cash, go and get a mortgage. So you kind of got to understand the greater scope of it.
I know someone's going to ask the question, is it better to buy in cash or to do a lease? In your opinion, which one?
Well, so buying cash or doing a mortgage or getting a mortgage, I would tell you right now. So cash, the benefit of cash is that it's more competitive, to the seller. So if you come with an offer with cash, obviously the seller knows that, this transaction is going to be fairly easy. There's no mortgage contingency involved, which, a mortgage contingency would basically be submitted with the offer. And it lets the seller know this person's putting X amount of dollars down. This is the lender they're using, and things can go wrong. I've had deals fall apart where, you bring you get the offer accepted. They had a pre-approval. We go through the whole process, and then basically they lose their financing for some reason because the mortgage, they just can't get the mortgage in the end. Cash, on the other hand, a seller sees that. They know that there's cash. Once this closes, I'm getting it all in cash. So I think it's just more, it can be in competitive deals. Yes, it helps. But I mean, all year I've been helping people with mortgages, and we just came, last year was the most competitive time I think anyone in Boston's ever seen. I mean, you had a perfect storm with COVID. There was a lot of people that were working from home. And, while you had some parts of the populations that really struggled through COVID, you had some that basically just got fat on Zoom meetings. They all came out once we got spring last year. It was just this influx of buyers, and it was very competitive. People were, submitting offers way over what they could actually afford. And that's where you would end up, or actually, sorry, what the property was actually worth. So let's say it's worth $500,000 and they come in at 560, and then they have this mortgage on there. There's going to be an appraisal on the property. So they're going to come in, the bank's going to check to see if the value is there in the home. And if you take put an offer that's, way over the listed price, and then it doesn't appraise, you're going to run into problems on the back end of it. So my point is that it's just, a super competitive market. Yeah, cash is king, and it can be tough to compete with, but there's definitely ways to get in with a mortgage. I think it goes to the same thing of just being persistent, not giving up, knowing what you want, and trying to get there. If you don't mind, I'll speak a little bit on my transaction last year, just because I think
definitely. Go ahead.
Kind of eye-opening. So, my goal last year was to buy a multifamily property so that I would have 1 unit or 2 units that I could rent out, and I would live in one, owner occupied. I started my housing search in April. And I went through April, May, June, July, submitting offers and getting pummeled. I was putting 5% down on my mortgage, and that's another thing we can talk about in a minute. But 5% down is not as competitive as all cash. Let's be very clear. And so I kind of went through submitting offers. I think I submitted 5 or 6 offers. And then we got to the end of July, and there was a listing in Medford. It was a 2-family where I took a really good shot on it. So I went over, I believe it was about $25K. I thought it was a real strong offer. I thought I had a good chance of getting accepted, and the broker called me and, told me it went X amount of dollars over that. And at that point, I had to re-sign my lease. Many of us being in leases, you have that renewal date, and your owner's going to want to get that property up for September 1st. So I was losing my runway to make this happen. I ended up re-signing my lease. And then I kind of just gave it a week and a half. I knew in my head I wasn't going to give up, but it kind of felt like I was giving up, And here comes the first week of August, and this listing pops up. My fiance and I basically, we saw it. One, we were absolutely amazed because it was absolutely beautiful. I'm sitting in it right now, and we went to see it. There was hardly anyone there. There ended up being two offers on the property. Ours offer was slightly over the other offer. I did pay slightly over what it was listed for, but we're talking a hair. Offer was accepted. I mean, it was one of the best. I mean, that moment alone, just after all that hard work and hearing that your offer is accepted, is a huge thing. Now I got to get it to the finish line, and I'm stuck in a lease. So, like anything, I kind of just took it in steps. I talked to my owner or the landlord that we were, living in their property, who had been really good to us. But you got to understand, she's a landlord. Even though she's nice, she's got an interest to get this rented. It's a business to her. And I put the unit up on market. I ended up renting it really quick. Being that I was an agent, I know the things that help rent an apartment, and I just basically tidied everything up, decluttered, got really good photos, a virtual tour, and I'm serious, I rented it off one showing. So that was taken care of. Then it was like, great. There's a process to get to the commitment from the bank where they're actually giving you the mortgage. And my fiance is a W-2 employee and I'm a 1099. Hers was super easy. Like, her side of the transaction was just very straightforward. It was not invasive. Me being 1099, it was a constant, like, we need this, we need that, we need to see this, we need this tax return. And being that we had basically, we're getting out of our apartment and didn't fully have the commitment, it was a little bit of a wild ride, because if we didn't get the commitment, now we're out of that apartment and we're going to be stuck at the end of the rental market with no options. And a dog, which, if anyone's tried to get a pet in Greater Boston, it's not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah.
So luckily got the commitment, and we closed on the home, and it's been great. I have a great tenant upstairs. With ownership comes a lot of different responsibilities. I mean, you've got maintenance, taxes, which seem to go up every year, water, sewer. So they're all manageable, they're all manageable. Like, it's scary to take that leap, but I don't know anyone that actually has closed on a home that's called me and been like, God, I regret this. And I certainly don't know anybody that's bought a home from me in the last few years that's called me and been like, wow, this was a really bad idea. I've never had it happen. So, and that's kind of why, why I work with the clients I do, because I enjoy seeing that process, and I want to see people, be able to build their own portfolio, or just have that home that they always wanted, where they own it, their family can come over, and, they're not paying rent to someone else. So
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I like how you brushed over a lot. Can you list down a couple forms that people would need for a W-2 versus a 1099, so people can have like somewhat of an idea?
Yeah, I mean, W-2, 1099, I get my 1099 at the end of the year, which is my form that basically shows all the income I've received from my brokerage. Your same thing on the W-2, you're getting that W-2 from your employer. It's showing you how much you paid into tax, and then you're filing your taxes. So that's really the difference. One's reported on a 1099, one's on a W-2.
Okay.
And again, 1099 doesn't show any taxes taken out, Social Security. It just shows the income that I received.
Yeah, I only asked because you said that there were like more forms that were required for buying a home.
Well, no. So for me, again, W-2 is pretty straightforward, and obviously credit is going to play a role in it. So they are going to run your credit. For me, it was just more, I needed to show a profit and loss statement. So 1099, and, so that kind of information. I had to provide old tax returns because, I think it's a little bit riskier to the bank. The W-2 is pretty straightforward. The 1099 is, can be much more vague. I mean, I can write things off on my taxes, whereas you're not really doing that with a W-2. So I think that's the reason. Like, you got to understand the loans. I mean, part of the reason why the economy crashed in, 07, 08 was was really because of bad lending practices. And I know because I had friends in the industry that were doing loans with things called like stated income, where you could just walk into a lender and you could say, hey, I make $2 million. You just wrote it down, you stated that's what you made, and that's what they went off of. Okay. And that's what caused that housing crisis. Now, loans are pretty stringent. And the reason why I'm really optimistic about the real estate markets is that lenders you're getting pre-approved for something you can afford. Okay. They're not doing these transactions where people are getting in over their head, if that makes sense. So things have really tightened up, and I think that's good. I thought it was a bit of a pain when I was dealing with it, because it seemed like they needed one thing after another. But I want to be clear, when getting pre-approved, or, once you go through the underwriting process, typically the W-2 side is going to be a lot easier. You'll also be providing savings account information, showing you what you have in savings. They're looking at everything. They're looking at your financial picture to, basically say, hey, we're going to give you this loan. So.
Okay. For credit scores, do you have any idea of what is considered a good credit score versus a bad credit score?
So I should know this. I'm pretty sure it's 740 is basically the top of, like, anything above that, you're in a very good position. But I know there's products, and again, this would be something more to speak with the lender, that credit in the 600s can get, pre-approved for a mortgage too. So there are different products out there, but I'm pretty sure 740 is like the benchmark to get, the best possible financing.
Yeah.
But there are many programs out there, and there's many people with credit in the sixes that, are able to purchase homes. Credit is something that can be fixed. A lot of people, have these credit scores. They come to me and they're like, I'll never be able to do anything. And I'm like, well, one, that's a bad attitude. And two, it's actually, there are ways to improve it. For example, I had someone that needed, their credit wasn't great 2 years ago. They now have really good credit. I know one of the tools they use was called a secured card. And again, I'm not a lender, I'm not a banker, I'm a real estate agent, but I know a secured card is basically you give a bank, $500 coming from your own pocket, and they put that money on a credit card for you. So you've basically paid for the line of credit per se, but then you use it like a regular credit card, and you just develop good habits with savings and paying the card on time. And your credit score, it doesn't happen overnight, but you can definitely boost it up, within a few months. And again, that's something that a lender would be better versed at kind of going over.
I have a couple of videos on my YouTube channel for those of you for some of you that are watching, about budgeting, saving, and how to improve your credit score and your finances. The first step is writing down what you owe, and also getting into that mindset of, I need to tackle this. I'm not going to wait until tomorrow, but get it done today. It doesn't matter how long it takes, months, years, as long as you're paying it off and you're building up your credit score with the less money that you owe. Try to find resources. If you don't have money for it, find an accountability partner, a bookkeeper, or even use websites like Mint or Every Dollar to help you get on track.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't tell many people this, but I think it's an important fact. When after that whole project, I mean, I was hit. My credit took a hit. My income took a hit. My savings were basically dwindled. My back was against the wall. Okay. And there was no way I wasn't going to figure it out. I will tell you, my credit is so good. It makes me very proud now because I worked on it and I protect it now. But I think the big thing was, like, just like you said, writing it down. That's exactly what I did. I looked, these are my expenses. These are the ones that are fixed. So, car payment, insurance, rent, and then these are like ones that I can kind of, pull with. Like, do I need this fancy cell phone plan? There's little things that I adjusted to basically bring my expenses down where they were manageable. And the thing is once I started to figure out how to save, it actually became really fun. And I started, really getting into it, and I wanted to see how much I could save. And I'm still that kind of person where when I look at, my savings or any investments, like I don't like things dropping between a certain level. So like once I get to a spot, like if it dips at all below that, like I get anxiety. I'm like, oh, how am I getting this back up? Real estate can be one of those jobs where you can make really good money, and then you might have a month where you've got some transactions you're drawing along and you're just not getting paid. So you really have to learn how to budget in the beginning. I don't know if my broker would like me saying this, but the point where I kind of realized things were working really well was when my bookkeeper was coming into me and telling me that the escrow at the brokerage was not my personal savings, that I needed to basically cash out my deals. And it dawned on me that at that point, like I wasn't just running this hamster wheel trying to get money. Like I actually had money, and it like I didn't need that yet. So like I just wasn't pulling it back. And once I got to that point, like I realized that recipe I had been doing to originally cut expenses, live within my means, was working. And all I'm going to say is that it does take a little time, but it doesn't take that long. I mean, I figured it out, within 2 years, I'd really fixed my credit really well. Even after year one, my credit was much improved, but it was about 2 years where it got into like the really, really good realm. My savings, I'd replenished my savings, and then got to a point where, I could start putting money into my own business is something I do, and kind of grow from there. So I just want to say, like anyone that's out there with bad credit and, no savings, like I understand what that's like. I've been there. And I can just tell you that if you focus and actually, get a grasp on what you're spending your money on and then adapt accordingly, you can get to wherever you want. Like we are all capable of doing whatever we want. I truly believe that. Like no one in this world, is just stuck. How bad do you want it? Yes, everyone has different circumstances, but I still believe that anyone can do what they want to do.
Agreed.
If you want to fix your finances, there's ways to figure it out. Your YouTube channel. YouTube is a powerful tool. It can teach you a lot. I still use YouTube as a resource in my real estate business into things I want to research. So the information is out there. We live in an amazing time where everyone's so connected through the web. I mean, you got to put in the work. Don't sit there and say, oh, I'll never be able to buy a home, but then just continue doing the same thing that you're doing. Like, yeah, you probably never will buy a home if you do that. But if you assess and kind of see where you're at and then adjust accordingly, like you will get there. So
Definitely. And I'll put the 2 videos in the description box below. Finding resources is important. Let's say you're getting your finances together and you're trying to find a home that you're interested in. How do you go about finding an agent?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Well, being that I'm an agent, I've never really had to deal with that on my own transaction, but I think you need to do your due diligence. Just like when you get a mortgage, it's call a few lenders, see what they're offering. Same thing with real estate agents. Like it's a large transaction. You want to work with someone that's capable, knows what they're doing, and has a track record of doing it successfully. Talk to the agent. If the agent doesn't call you back, I'm going to tell you, move to the next one. Like if they're not communicating and getting back to you in a timely manner, that's a red flag right there. Okay. Meet them in person. You can learn a lot about meeting someone in person. A lot of agents will set up a Zoom meeting, get a feel for what they're like, on a human level. Okay. But I think the main thing is just doing some due diligence. And, there's going to be agents that work better with certain people, we're all different. And so you got to find someone that you kind of work well with. Just understand the agent is a really important part of the transaction. They basically move the entire transaction along. They're also looking out for your interest to make sure you're not, making a bad decision by, putting an offer that, that you're not gonna be able to cash that check, if that makes sense. So, but I think the big things that my clients, like every client I work with, every client I sell a home to or sell their home, I always ask them, like, why do you work with me? It always comes down to me. Like it's like they just felt comfortable with me. They felt I was responsive. They felt like I cared. And then, not for nothing, I'm a pretty good counselor because like it's an emotional roller coaster. So, I'm there kind of guiding you through it. And I've had clients cry, yell, cry, like I'm there and we're going to get through it. And I think it's important to have someone that's holding your hand. There's a lot of agents out there, and this isn't a knock because people grow, but like if you get stuck, not with the person you're think you're dealing with, I don't think it's a good look. My whole business is built where I'm the person you're dealing with, and maybe that changes later on. But right now, that's what I enjoy. And when I'm working the buyer side, I'm only taking a certain amount of buyers at a time because I'm only one person, and I want to be able to, basically give that client the attention that they need. Am I able to go to every single open house with a client? No. I'm not. There's no way that a lot of them run at the same time. I'm working with many buyers, but I'm always available. And I think that's the big thing. So the other thing is I would ask the agent, would you mind if I spoke to some of your recent clients? Which is something, I have a lot of people do. And, I'm fortunate to have a lot of clients that I can, be like, hey, I sold this property in JP. This person was really happy with their home. Here's their number. Connect them, find out how it was working with them. Because if you work with an agent that doesn't know what they're doing, it can lead to a very, very unpleasant experience, and you might not get to the objective you're trying to get to. So I think do your due diligence, just pick up the phone and call some agents and feel them out. And, agents, we're not special. There's a lot of us, okay? There's a basically people constantly getting their real estate license, constantly entering brokerages. I really believe there's like an 80-20 principle, if you're familiar with that, which means, that there's 20% of the agents, maybe even 10 that are doing the majority of the business. And then you have a lot of agents underneath that are kind of, part-time or, just not really in it to win it. And I think you want to find someone that kind of matches your energy. You feel comfortable when you meet them in person, and, they're giving you the time of day. Like, I'm available to a fault. And I think, it serves me well a lot. Sometimes it doesn't always serve me well, but, I think it's important that people know they can reach me and that I'm helping them walk through this transaction, which again, for most of us, it's going to be the largest transaction you ever do. This isn't like just going to buy, even a car, you know what I mean? And typically when people go buy a car, they'll test drive a lot of cars. So, with your lender, with your real estate agent, make some calls, ask your friends. Really, really important. Ask your friends, hey, I know you bought a home. How was your experience with this agent? If they're like, that agent was lights out, I would go call that agent, And so again, I think it just comes down to doing a little due diligence, but actually do the due diligence, spend a little time and do a little research. And I'm going to say, don't always get caught up with the glossy, fancy facade, because oftentimes, in my opinion, those facades are just too big. And yeah, it might look glitzy on the outside, but the service that you're going to get is not the service that you're expecting per se.
Yeah, and when he says due diligence, it's more of like a checklist. Like, these are your requirements that you want or need, whether it's amenities, location, privacy, and we can just keep on building a whole list.
Yeah.
But definitely.
Let me tell you. So when I take someone that's looking for a buyer, I typically do a consultation with them. And, again, there's a process. There's usually a few phone calls. There might be like going out for coffee. I'm trying to feel them out as much as they're trying to feel me out. I want to know that I can actually help this person and, what are they looking for? So I do a lot of listening. I mean, that's a big thing. I'm listening to what they're telling me what they want. Okay. I can tell you that, pick a list of like 10 things that you want in a home. Okay. Very rare do buyers find all 10 things they want in a home. So you've kind of got to adapt, but I think the big thing is getting out and seeing what's on the market, learning the little nuances about the different neighborhoods that you might be searching in or the types of properties you're looking in. And then have that list and kind of find out, which are your non-negotiables, and then which are the ones that like, hey, I'm willing to trade this for this. You know what I mean? And you do have to be reasonable, because if you go out with that list and you're trying to hit those 10 every time, very unlikely it's going to happen. But if you start going out and start learning and figuring out, this is what's really important. This I can probably let go of. You will get to a place where, you find the property that works for you. When I'm with buyers, I mean, I have buyers that I've worked with for over a year, and, we may have submitted an offer to, some have not submitted an offer, but I'm still communicating with them. They're still looking at properties. And I think the big thing is action. Like, you got to get out there. You got to go start looking, I always go on the first showing. So when I get a new buyer, I come out and I'll take them to several properties and we'll go look around. And, yes, I'm showing the property. I'm going over, the different things that I'm looking for. When I'm in the basement, I'm looking for water, and, how old is the boiler and the hot water tank, and, things like that are kind of the thing I'm really focused on. But I'm also seeing how they react in the home, and listening to the things they like and don't like. And that kind of helps me narrow my search. And oftentimes as a real estate agent, I find things that my clients didn't even realize they want. Case in point, I've got many buyers that we're looking in specific areas, and, some of those areas it was just too competitive. Like, even in kind of this off season, like we're in December, we're going to the holiday, it's relatively quiet normally, around this time. There's still buyers out there, and there's some markets that are still just, hyper competitive. For example, Quincy single families. I have a lot of buyers that want a Quincy single fam, very competitive. And so as we do the search and we kind of experience, getting an offer and getting, pummeled by someone beating us out, I start throwing little what I call chattering monkeys in their head. And the chattering monkey is, I give you an idea, and I let that chattering monkey just kind of mill around, and eventually you start, hey, that's actually not a bad idea. And what I've done many times is taken people from one market they really thought they wanted to go in to another market where I find them something that definitely works for them, might be a little bit less competitive for them to get in. I'm not going to say you're not going to get into a bidding war, but, I end up putting them in another neighborhood, and then they end up absolutely loving it. And that just comes from, I work all over Greater Boston. When I moved here, I didn't know the city at all. I know the city like the back of my hand at this point. I mean, I really do know a lot of the markets. There's markets I focus on, but with my buyers, I go all around Greater Boston. And, the buyer that was looking in Quincy ended up just closing on a home in Milton. And she's thrilled. It's beautiful. It has space. It has a little river at the back that's like cutting between the two properties. It's updated. It gets a ton of light. It was just such a fit on so many levels for her, and she had never even considered it, and I know she's really, really happy in the home. And so I think you got to be open, and part of my job is kind of presenting options that maybe you didn't think of. And I'm not here to pin you into a neighborhood you don't want to be in. I genuinely want you to want that house. If you're not like excited about putting that offer, I don't want to put an offer with you. That's not what we're here to do. I'm here to find you a home that you're going to love, you're going to be excited about. Real estate is very exciting, and I want you to have that same emotion. And so I'll keep working with you, until we find something that kind of hits on most of the notes. But again, I think buyers have to understand, every market's different, every home's different. Make a list, figure out your non-negotiables, figure out the ones that, you might trade in or trade out with. And then, be open to options. If you go out to a market and you get pummeled 4 times in a row, getting beat on your offers, maybe open up a little bit. Start looking in some other places. There's so many amazing neighborhoods in Greater Boston. They're and that's, part of what I try to bring to the table. So
definitely. So we hit finding an agent, location. How about when you're about to get that offer? What are some steps that you could take to kind of get that initial, yes, we want to buy into you?
Yeah. So, well, the offer is going to come after I've already kind of formed a relationship. So I'm already working with the buyer, and I've probably been out to some properties. They've seen some open houses. I set them up on an MLS drip. So they're basically receiving properties from me as they hit market, which I think is really important, because a lot of these large websites, I don't always find the data. I know the data is not always correct. I've dealt with it on my own listing that's been up before. And so that's another reason why you want to be talking to an agent, because they have access to the multiple listing service. Furthermore, they might have off-market properties. I have properties that, for whatever reason, a seller does not want it on the MLS. They want it to be kind of discreet, and they would rather do the transaction off market. Okay. I have condos and multifamilies where they're not even going to hit the MLS. So you're not going to see that on a large national site. Okay. Yeah. So again, I've already been working with them. When we get to the offer, that means we've got some skin in the game with each other. We've been looking at properties. Okay. When we get to the offer stage, the biggest thing I'm doing is due diligence. So I'm looking at the properties around that have sold. I'm looking at properties that are on market, and I'm trying to determine if the pricing is in line, if it's high, is this underpriced? I'm looking at the numbers and using comps, okay, comparable properties to kind of figure that out. And the real important part of that is that I want you to, I don't want you to overpay for something. You know what I mean? And again, when you have that mortgage contingency, like where an appraisal is going to come in and see, they're going to determine what the house is worth for the bank. And if your offer is over that, we kind of went into this, there's an issue there. So my main thing is kind of looking at the numbers. Then I'm also, advising them to, so the offer is going to be drafted where you're going to basically put the offer amount. It's going to have the different timelines. They'll have timelines on there of when you're getting to purchase and sale. It'll speak about deposits, okay? And then you're going to have contingencies, all right? So mortgage contingency, that's basically going to state how much money are you financing on the deal? How much are you putting down? Inspection contingency, this is another big one. So, I was talking about how I'm typically looking at the systems in the house that are expensive. I'm looking for, water in the basement. I'm smelling around. Do I smell mildew? Like signs that tell me there could be something, that could be an issue down there. So inspections, an inspection is where you're basically going to put down a dollar amount that you're comfortable with, that if you do a home inspection where you bring an inspector through, they're going to look at that property in and out, and they're going to give you a very detailed report. And then you have to determine like, hey, so this window doesn't work. This window seal is broken. My hot water tank needs to be replaced. Those all can kind of be added up. And if it doesn't match what you put, if it goes over what you put down, you're comfortable with. So let's say you put $10,000, that is kind of that number where you're comfortable. Like if I have to spend up to 10K to kind of get the property where I want it, or fix these things, I'm going to stay in the deal. If it goes over that, I can get out of the deal. Okay. So if like the roof came back, a roof can be $20,000, $25,000, $30,000 to fix. So if you had 10K there on your inspection contingency, and they came back and they said the roof is totally shot, needs to be replaced, it's going to cost 25 grand, you can walk away from the deal. Okay. If it just comes back and it's like, oh, you got to fix these two windows and this hot water tank needs to be fixed, it's going to be under 10K. Okay. And at that point, you'd still be in the deal. I think an inspection is really important in Greater Boston. I did an inspection on my home. I don't advise clients to not get an inspection. I think that the thing with an inspection in these really competitive markets is that a seller may look at it as like one other hurdle they have to get through to sell the property. So you were seeing buyers basically waiving inspections, making these offers that are just, way higher than what they really should be putting the offer in at. And I think that comes with a good agent who's kind of looking at that looking at your best interest.
Okay, negotiating. You got the offer and you're ready to buy, and now you want to get a lower price.
Yep. So I think it really depends on the time of year. Again, during last season, it was pretty tough to negotiate it. There was not much that was selling under what it was listed for. It was more a battle to see how, far it was going to go over. I can tell you though, in negotiating, I've had deals where, I've competed with cash buyers and the seller still took, my client with a mortgage contingency. And I think the reason was on that one is that I was basically communicating with the broker, kind of on the backstory. They have those, I don't know if you've heard of the love letters, which they still allow here in Massachusetts. There's been some problems with those, but it depends how you paint the picture to the broker who's going to convey it to the seller. And you got to understand there's owners that cash isn't their only motive. I've had sellers that basically, I'm working with a seller now in JP that her main concern is that an investor does not buy the property. She wants it to go to a first-time home buyer that's going to fit in with the building. So it's just really to paint, it's painting the picture, I think, is the big thing. I'm always looking, at where I think I could get an offer put in. I mean, right now I'm submitting an offer in Rosendale. We're coming 25K under, but I've looked at the numbers on it. One, it was overpriced in my opinion. I looked really in depth at, what had sold, what was on market. And although it's a great unit updated with 2 parking spots and central AC, what it was listed for and what I think it was worth is 2 different things. So I basically advised my buyer, we're drafting the offer 25K under. I really think it depends where you are in the market. I also think it depends, how I portray my buyers. Because, at the end of the day, and I mean this, not everyone is 100% motivated by the mighty dollar. There are many sellers out there that are going to look at the whole picture. Yes, things like mortgage contingency, inspection contingency can make an offer less competitive. And that's typically why on that inspection, we'd put a bit of a higher number there, 10, 15K, because at the end of the day, real estate's also emotional. So you have to know, like, this is a property you want to be and you're emotionally invested in it. And in the long-term scheme of things, if you have to put 15K of work into the property to kind of fix some things, 15 years from now, that's going to be, that's not even going to be on your mind. Like, the city of Boston is such a desirable place to live in this country, and you have people coming in all the time. Unless there's some, just crazy unforeseen event, your appreciation in the city has been going up for many years. And it just seems to continue to rise, and I don't really see it stopping. So understand the negotiation part of it for me is really looking at the numbers. Where do I think I can come in at to make this deal that still the seller is going to accept the offer? And then I'm also trying to sell my buyers as well. And when I deal on the listing side a lot. I have a few listings currently and more coming down the pipeline for 2022. Any offer I get, we're looking at the whole picture. Okay. And yes, there are owners that just see the cash, no contingency, and they want something easy and quick. And yeah, they're going to take that. But there's just as many sellers out there that are going to be looking at the person coming in. So it goes to crafting it in a way that's appealing to the person I'm presenting it to, which in most cases, obviously for buyers, is going to be the seller. There's little, creative things you can do that kind of, make it more appealing. I think just thinking outside the box, thinking on your toes, asking the seller, like I'll ask the agent, like, is there anything the seller particularly wants? A lot of people don't ask that question, and I had a deal where the seller hadn't found a home. We ended up doing what's called a sale leaseback. So the home was sold to the new buyer. They were still in a lease. So this actually worked out really well for them because they were able to ride out their lease term, and they gave the seller the flexibility of basically coming in and paying them rent until they found their home and,
Oh, that's
now
cool.
they're in the property. So there's all different ways to get the deals done. Each one is different, and I kind of have to look to see where it's at, but just understand there's ways to win in a competitive market.
Definitely. We got 2 more parts. You ready?
All right.
All right. Moving into the home.
Moving into the home. So you'll close on your home, all right, and you'll be handed the keys once the transaction is closed and on record with the registry of deeds. And I'm typically the one handing your keys. I'm typically meeting at your property. And understand, before you've gotten to that point, we'll have done what's called a final walkthrough, typically the day before closing, which is kind of making sure that the property we're getting is in the condition that we're expecting it. There's not a bunch of stuff left in the basement. The house has been cleaned out, making sure everything kind of works, walking through, checking appliances, AC, heating systems. And then you have your closing, and then you get your keys. And that is a big day. I mean, that's an emotional day. You're walking into property that you own for the first time. And with ownership, depending whether it's a condo or a single family or multifamily, there's going to be different things you kind of have to factor in. Like a condo per se, or for example, is going to have, you have a condo association. They're, probably doing some maintenance. They're, you own the condo, and there's, you have other condos there, and there's an association that kind of manages it. A single family, you walk in that door and the buck stops with you. Like, you're the person that has to handle all the maintenance. So I help with the move-in. I have vendors that I work with. I have movers I work with. I have handyman. I have general contractors. All sorts of different services that can add value to someone that just bought a home. And I've worked with them. So like, I can co-sign and say, hey, this guy does a great job. Oh, you need a little bit of work done. Like, here's a handyman. Great handyman is hard to find. So yeah, I think planning is a big thing. Like, movers are not going to be booked on the day. So like, those are things we'll kind of talk about depending on where you're coming from, to get those things set up so things move streamlined into your new property. Once you're in that property, I don't just disappear. So as I said, I'm very available, and my clients, a lot of them refer me business, and a lot of them have become friends at this point. So if you have a problem later on with something in the home and you're like, hey, gutters need cleaning, I've got someone for that. I want to get a fence done, I can help you with that. Hey, we're having a problem with this, here's someone that can help you with that. So that's also part of the service I provide. Yeah, and I think that's pretty much all I could speak on it. But moving day is a big day, and there is some planning that's involved in going into that. But it's supposed to be exciting. So
it is exciting.
Oh, it's super exciting, man. It just, people cry, smile, laugh. Like, it's super exciting handing off someone keys to their home, especially when it's their first one.
First home. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you kind of know that they took the journey and that they made it. So that I will tell you, I'm not a mover. So I am not the one moving you in the property, but I'm going to get you in there and get you your keys and, get you situated. So.
The last question, I know a lot of people are asking this. Some people want to get multifamily homes and want to rent out the space.
Ooh,
how do you go about doing it?
Okay, so as I said before, there's a lot of 2-family, 3-family properties. So, it's kind of the play I did, where I could have went and purchased a condo that was all fancy, shiny, and new, but it's a condo. I almost look at it like W-2 income. It's kind of capped. An investment property, you can come in owner occupied. Because you're being owner occupied, you can get much more favorable financing. You can put less money down, as low as 3.5% of the property. The other units in the building now, you can generate income off them to help basically pay your mortgage. And the goal being to eventually cash flow, where whatever expenses you have on the property, you're actually pulling more money on the rent. I can tell you, on the multifamily I bought, my expenses have actually gone down from renting, believe it or not, because I'm getting X amount of dollars on the top floor. With what our mortgage payment costs, it actually makes my fiance's and I's payment to our mortgage less than what we were paying in rent. So that's a pretty powerful thing there. You can also do it with a condo, though, and I shouldn't have just knocked condos, because I knew I didn't want a condo to build wealth. I knew I wanted a multifamily property. But I do help clients do what's called a house hack, which is basically like taking a condo, and instead of having 3 units or 2 units I'm renting out, one I'm living in, I go get a 3-bed condo. I live in a bedroom and I rent 2 rooms out. And so I have a lot of clients that have lived with roommates for a long time, but have saved money. They decide to go buy a condo in South Boston. And then they ask their roommates, hey, do you want to come? You're going to pay rent to me, but we're going to go live in this awesome condo, down in whatever neighborhood. And that's basically doing the same thing, so it really can go both ways. The multifamily was the route I wanted to go. And I'm already ready to try to start focusing on getting my second, and then I want to get a few of these going. I'm a landlord now. So it's, I think house hacking is a powerful tool, especially if you're not, and I should be upfront, like the thing I have going right now, we my fiance and I are 50-50 partners. Like, we everything's split down the center. Would it have been manageable for me on my own? I don't think I would have been able to purchase the same property I'm in, but I would have been able to get a multifamily somewhere. But for those people that don't have a significant other or someone they can kind of partner with, I think a condo house hack is a great first start. I have a good friend who's an agent. He's, I want to say 34 years old. He owns about $30 million in real estate, and he started doing the house hacking in condos. And now he has those condos as rentals because, as I said, Greater Boston is a very, very strong rental market. So if you live in a property for 2 years, you step out of it, you find a broker that does good in rentals, and get the unit rented out. Like if it's nice and a good property, it's and priced right, you're going to find a renter for it. So that's kind of a house hack. And then a lot of people, the house hack eventually try to step up into the multifamily. So it's a good way to kind of bridge the gap. But you know, you got to understand, you might want to, when you speak to a lender, kind of go into these questions. When they looked at it, they're looking at what the rent was on my top floor unit. That was factored into my mortgage. So it, you know, it helped me have much more purchasing power than if I didn't have the tenant up there. And, you know, my experience as a landlord, it's been great. You know, getting paid rent from a tenant is like, it's actually pretty cool. And that's basically kind of going into your savings account, you know, because you're putting that towards your principal interest. And I have been doing what I call the banker's secret. So I've been every month, we're basically putting an additional $1,000 towards our principal. Okay. And what that's doing is allowing us to pay the loan off faster. It basically cuts off about 9 to 10 years off a 30-year mortgage is kind of what we've figured out. And so we plan to continue doing that, you know, which will help us get into our second property, which, you know, is like once you've made the first step, the other steps are a lot easier. You know, it's buying that first property that's the hardest thing. Like I spent so long looking on the internet and, you know, researching different things to get to the point where I could actually buy. But it was like once there was a point where I was like, I couldn't get stuck with the analysis process. Like I either had to jump or like, you know, just sit on the sideline. And I just decided to jump and take action. And even if you're not qualified yet, there's no harm in reaching out to an agent or a lender. I highly recommend speaking to the lender first to find out where you're at. And because the lender is going to help you, you know, determine where you need to get to. Like they're going to kind of show you the way to get to that position where you can get the financing. And then, you know, talking to an agent and be like, hey, look, I think I'm going to be ready to buy in 2 years. Like I'm working with this lender. Like, you know, what do you think? Like, you know, start building that relationship now, because that agent was going to kind of help walk you through it too, you know, and you'll kind of be able to be in tune with where the market's going and then kind of be able to pivot accordingly with the information you're getting from the agent. And more importantly, understand your path to getting that loan with the lender. So it's never too early to reach out. I have lots of people that have called me where they're like, look, I know we can't do this now, but we're starting to work to get to that point. And I want to be there helping in any way I can, you know, get you to that path of ownership. You know, again, I worked with a lot of renters, a ton of renters. I built my whole business off rental clients. I mean, and so I have a love for the rental market. I think it gets to a point where your business is going to take off in a direction where you can't help everyone. Like as many people as I want to help, I have to be cognizant that right now I'm running pretty much solo. I do have some back end support, but I'm pretty much the face of it and I'm out there with the clients. And I don't want to get too big where it's not like that, because I don't think I would enjoy it as much. You know, so I deal with people across all spectrums that are, you know, at all different points in their life, and I'm kind of help pulling them along. You know, awesome. and whether you purchase a home next year or 5 years from now, you know, I'm still communicating with you and kind of guiding you along the way. So
that's good. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts. I would just tell you, I mean, you know, I've kind of already hit on this, but I think it's important. We can do anything we want. Like you really can, you know, get out there, learn, read books, talk to people. If you put in the effort, the world is yours. And I am a strong believer in that. I am here to help anyone that reaches out to me. You know, you give me a ring, you hit me up on Instagram. I am going to talk to you, and we're going to kind of figure out where you're at. Persistence, you know, put in the work, show up. Same thing I do with my real estate business. You need to do when you want to buy a home, you know, and once you get there, I promise you, it is literally the best feeling in the world. And so, you know, I wish everyone reaches their goals, but just treat them like goals, and hit different benchmarks along the way, and you will be a homeowner. You know, that's pretty much would be my closing statement. I can be followed on Instagram at NextGenBen. That's where a lot of my clients still to this day will communicate with me. I've actually had a lot of wonderful clients that have come through that platform. And I'm sure, I don't know if you'll be able to put my email or phone number in the show notes, but
Definitely.
you know, give me a call, and you know, let's talk. And you know, if we're a fit energy wise, I got a lot of energy. You know, I'd love to work with you. So
I would like to wrap up by saying thank you for Ben for coming and educating everybody on purchasing your first home. Make sure that you take some action steps right before you try to do anything. Create a goal sheet, figure out what your finances is, find resources, watch this video over and over. And like I had mentioned before, I have 2 videos where we talk about finances during the pandemic, how to pay off debt in a matter of months or years, depending on what your living situation is. I'm very grateful for you showing up to this episode because a lot of people are looking into it. And thank you for contributing to the Kickstarter campaign.
Oh, my pleasure, Bobby. My pleasure. I want to say the pleasure was all mine meeting you. I mean, if for anyone doesn't know, Bobby came to my seminar, and one, he helped my seminar go off without a hitch because he got my projector working. And he's just the warmest, like sweetest man. Like everyone that I was with was like, damn, Bobby was such a good guy. And he does have a Kickstarter, which I hope you put in your notes there so for people to support him. One last thing I would say. So as I said, I do a lot of research. I do a lot of reading. Okay. And a lot of real estate agents will kind of say this book was pivotal in the career path they took. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And all I'm going to say is if you're going to read any book to kind of get you in the mindset of, you know, thinking a different way, reaching your goals, and, you know, understanding, you know, how to build wealth, it's a great book. And I just wanted to throw that out there because it was very pivotal in my journey to where I am today. And if you could read anything, I think that'd be a place to start. And it'll kind of give you some insight.
Yep.
Yeah, great book. So anyways, it's a dreary Sunday here in Greater Boston, and I'm going to go walk my beloved little Brittany Spaniel. But Bobby, been a pleasure seeing you. I know we'll talk again soon. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to sit here with you. It was fun.
Thank you. And just to let everybody know, the Kickstarter campaign ends on January 6th. Help me if you're able to support. We offer tiers such as early access to YouTube videos, being featured on the podcast, and also access to webinars and presentations. I'm doing a presentation at WeWork on December 28th on a Tuesday at 2 p.m. at 501 Boylston Street in Boston. So definitely come check me out. If you're not able to attend, definitely sign up for the Tier 2 campaign, and you'll be able to see it pre-recorded. And you can follow me on Instagram and Clubhouse at BPerryFilms. And it was nice working with you. Thank you.
Awesome, brother. You have a good one, man. We'll talk soon, okay?
Okay.